Well, here's a show that I wasn't expecting to tear apart at all, especially this early in the series. Not to say this is my least favorite episode of the show, it's my second least. Now, before I go on, let me make it very clear. Star Wars: The Forces of Evil is probably my favorite modern show. Now, there's definitely better quality shows, technically speaking. I mean, in terms of animation, complex stories, Steven Universe is probably the best you're going to get right now. But there's something about this show that makes it my favorite. That being said, this episode isn't terrible, but it's got one minor thing that kind of rubs me the wrong way. And this is a very, very minor thing. And to be honest, it's not even a big deal. But before I start the full review, let me state what it is. There is a kind of underlying tone in this particular episode that kind of feels like it's trying to play the message of be who you are, and my only complex is it ends up saying that you shouldn't try to change who you are if who you are is, in this case, a bad guy. And it just says a lot of things like that, and honestly, Star is a little out of character in my opinion here, because even in certain episodes before this, she hasn't been this intolerant of monsters. And I understand, especially after seeing Mutapendence Day, why they don't like monsters. But it's just because even then, early in the series, she's been tolerant of other monster-like beings. Either way, let's just get straight to the episode. Like many episodes of the first season, this one starts with a battle against the monsters. So it's a very cliche start at this point, as we are in episode 7, and several episodes have started like this. Either way, it's entertaining to watch, and this one ends a little differently, with Ludo having the opportunity to actually grab the wand. When it happens is he calls on our title character, Lobster Claws. And, well, you'll see what he does.
Now! I got it! What the? You got clawed!
So this mistake ends up getting Lobster Claws fired from his job. And that's where our episode's going to start coming off. Where Star finds Lobster Claws in her yard, still there after the fight, which is not a normal.
This is the part where you fight back.
Go ahead! Blast me! Do it!
So, I'm going to do a little bit of paraphrasing here for the sake of time. Basically, the rest of the episode goes in through Lobster Claws trying to do stuff the good way. And then ultimately failing, and Marco staying confident while Star is basically going, he's a monster, he cannot be anything but evil. Which, I'll be honest, part of the reason I dislike this episode a little more is personal bias. So, if you love this episode, that's okay. There is a lot of good things about this episode. There are a lot of funny jokes. But, certain things just didn't click right with me, and which is what we're going to get to later. Ultimately, Star talks to Lobster Claws, and they have quite the speech.
The problem is, Marco's trying to make you something you're not. You're a vile, repulsive monster. Why fight it?
Yeah, I am repulsive. I shouldn't be helping humans. I should be hurting them. You in particular.
To short it up even shorter than this review could be, I'm going to do a little bit of more paraphrasing. Basically, what's going to end up happening is they arrange to have the fight, and Star's going to let Lobster Claws win in order to get him his old job back so he doesn't have to try to be good anymore. And basically, he gets her wand after Ludo tells him that he'd be impressed if he did that, and Star's like, says pretty much, we had a deal, what's going on? And Lobster Claws ends up struggling between whether or not, and my problem here is most of the message would be cleared up if Lobster Claws ultimately decided to give Star the wand. What ends up happening is he gets very indecisive, the wand keeps switching between good and evil, he doesn't know where he's going at, and Marco kicks out his hand. I personally, if I were the writers, I would have had him ultimately end up deciding to give Star the wand. Because then it shows that there was actually good in him, not just he was going between because she had a deal and stuff. And quite frankly, it's a very minor nitpick for me, so I'm not going to focus too much on that. Instead, what I'm going to focus on is the ending joke that they had.
What about wanting to be good? That's my monster!
Marco, you were right. There was some good in him after all.
Not much.
And when I say nitpick, I really mean kind of really be very sidelined by this. Because on one hand, I find the joke funny. I do. But on the other hand, this episode went in a way that very much seemed like it was teaching a moral. And I don't know if that's what they were still trying to do at the end, or if they were just trying to do a joke episode. And the moral they seemed to be going with was, be yourself. Don't try to change yourself too much. And while that's true, there's a middle ground. There's that you have to be yourself to a certain extent, but you also want to fix some aspects of yourself, if you will, to make yourself a better person. And this episode just kind of goes against that and says that all monsters are evil. A point that in one of the best episodes of the show, Independence Day, completely refutes, as not all monsters are evil. Sometimes the real monsters aren't the monsters. The humans went out and massacred them. So, this episode in general, it's not terrible. I've seen much worse. When we get to shows like Breadwinners, Teen Titans Go, Modern SpongeBob, there you will see terrible. But right now, this, and honestly, along with Henry Danger, which I reviewed last time, these aren't the worst things in existence. And I'm starting on them because they're shows that got on my nerves, but I'm not quite ready to tackle the big ones yet. And so I'm going to start with a couple of these easier ones. However, I'm trying something a little different next time, and I'll get onto that as soon as I'm done with my little thing about this show right now. As I said in the beginning of the review, this is not my least favorite episode. However, this episode gives me more to work with than my actual least favorite episode. My least favorite episode, Pizza Thing, was honestly just really boring. So, there's not much to talk about with it. It's Marco going to go get a pizza, the guy gets it wrong. Honestly, the entire review and why I don't like it can be summed up with the words, it's boring and it's not funny like some of the other episodes. And don't get me wrong, that's a Season 2 episode. Season 2 still, though, despite having the worst episode of the show, was an improvement over Season 1. And that was for various reasons. We'll get to that when I do a positive review on it. So, in summation, this show is good. Lobster Claws is not a terrible episode of the show by any means. It's a bad episode for Star, in my opinion, but every good show has a couple of duds if you really look into it. I'll be getting to some of them soon. I mean, I don't have any planned future date for it, but there's a Steven Universe episode I plan to review negatively. I plan to review a positive one first. That episode that's negative, by the way, is Say Uncle, and it was a crossover with Uncle Grandpa, and it just didn't work. But for now, I'm sticking with some of the other stuff I've got on my slate. I will be doing that, and well, I guess I'd be talking about the next episode then. Alright, well, as terms of next time, I do have the next, 12 episodes planned out. So, I will be able to tell you what review is next every time. And as for next one, I am doing something a little different in that it's not an actual review, but I'm asking the question, is it that bad? In other words, I've got a movie that's been panned by critics. I'll see you next time with Transformers 2007.